Are you ready to be in top form?
Heuristics.
You're about to enjoy and be transformed by some killer life and business hacks that we've designed to improve everything from your marketing and management,
Look, Alex,
your
I'm gonna keep talking.
lifestyle, and even your travel. You're going to be looking good. Come and get it.
That was a child-reared tool. Very effective. Each one had their own tool.
I don't know if that's what really on topic for today's show.
No, not for today necessarily, but it could be a show of its own. I think Leslie's going to cue us. Oh, we're good to go.
Yeah.
So let's, before we even get started, which is a linguistic trick we can talk about, we should talk about we're going to go really meta right now. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about, which is there are these things called heuristics.
Yep.
We're going to talk about that. They lead to cognitive bias. Cognitive bias is used to lead us around, I think, to use your expression, Sam, like a pig with a ring in its nose.
That's right.
And
that was definitely my expression.
Listen, you had like those sound levels or something. It was terrifying.
Just hit refresh.
Okay.
Or just go click home again.
Oh, well,
I think we triggered the software.
Yeah, we triggered it. But
Talk too early.
here's the thing is, we can probably, it's hard, I think, but we could probably get control over how brands, big tech and big data are manipulating our brains. If we could get control over that, we're more free to make choices. And then the other thing is, should we, presumably ethically, be using these same tools we're going to talk about to promote our own businesses if we're sure that we're doing it in an ethical way? And I believe there are ethical ways to do this.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about freedom and some ways that people are being manipulated. So let's get started with the sort of root piece of this, of cognitive bias, which is heuristics. And since you're a scientist and an engineer, can you talk a little bit about where that word comes from and what it means, and we'll talk about how it applies to humans.
Heuristics are, for lack of a better word, shortcuts or hacks that we use.
That's going to trigger Bill Burke, by the way.
Good.
He's
He needs it. That we use to arrive to a solution or an answer quickly, right? And
presumably an accurate one.
Presumably accurate, but we accept using these heuristics, at least initially, that it might not be optimal perfect, but sufficient in order for us to get the answer or solution we need sooner, right? So a simple example would be rounding, right? So two numbers to add, 17 plus 18 is 35, right? So if I'm rounding to the 5, 17 gets rounded down to 15, 18 gets rounded up to 20, and I arrive at 35. Pretty good, right? However, if you're rounding to the 10s, 17 goes to 20, 18 goes to 20, and I'm at 40, right? So that alpha could be acceptable. It might not be acceptable. And, this is just a gross example, but those are something we can go back and analyze.
Heuristic can change. It's sort of engineering of it, which implies like a conscious thinking about it.
Right.
It could change depending on how accurate it has to be for the work.
Right. And so if you're just paying a bill, and your dish was 17 and my dish was 18, rounding to the nearest 10 works because we both put in $20, right?
So that's a heuristic and a really good example of one. When it gets to humans, we all do this because the world is just too complicated. There are too many variables for most of the situations we're in. So we have to use some shortcuts. And what we've found is, probably through biological evolutionary process, certain heuristics have become part of how our brains work. I suspect that they vary.
So would you say that the reticular activating system is a embedded heuristic?
I would. Just so that if somebody's listening that doesn't know what the reticular activating system is, it's kind of a piece of code or software in the brain that calls into conscious awareness certain things, because your sensory organs are getting too much information at any given time to be consciously aware of it all. So your brain is basically communicating with its this little switch, this RAS, reticular activating system, and you're saying, I'm hungry. So now it's going to start looking for signs or evidence of food in the data that it's getting.
Right.
And it starts showing everything that might be food. So it's a perfect example of a built-in biological heuristic. And people who have well-developed reticular activating systems, that they're adept at programming, are very successful people.
Right.
The reticular activating system can become an enemy of your own success when you're not very adept at telling it what to do. When you ask yourself questions like, how could today be worse than yesterday? The reticular activating system is going to start looking for evidence that it is.
It will tell you.
Yeah, and that is, by the way, a particular type of cognitive bias that we're going to look for and talk about too. And these cognitive biases have been figured out, not because they're conscious, because most of the time they're not, by big brands, social media, people selling on the internet, political parties. You can see the results of that in the diminishing ability of people to have informed, meaningful social discourse on issues. Everybody's polarized because people have been programming them to be polarized using these things that we're talking about. So we're telling you this only because, regardless of what political affiliation you have, if you're frustrated because it seems like other people aren't listening to you, you might be surprised to find that you're not listening to other people too. It's a very tricky bit of business to hold two distinctly different, often apparently opposing thoughts in your mind, and to try to flesh out from them what might be true or useful about
And that is a particular kind of cognitive bias, where you think everybody else is biased, but not me. Yeah.
That's the whole, if you think everybody's an asshole, then you're
you might be. Yeah, that's. I think that's true, and I'm saying that based on some experience I had as a young boy with members of my own family. So, I'm not judging. Because
there to judge.
So we're going to talk about all of these biases, as well as how people are using them against us, and how we can use them not against other people, but to get people results that they really want. Because you've heard us talk on the show before about a greased slide, which is a system or a way that people think about things where they sort of don't subject it to necessarily as much criticism or analysis, and they do the thing that you've suggested because they've gotten it in a way that they really trust. Well, if you're going to use that, you better make darn sure that you really know what they want and that what you have fulfills that need in a way that's really particularly useful and meaningful to them. Right. But once you do that, then it's kind of silly to present that in a way that's really super hard for their brains to process. And that is the rationale that all of these social media companies and brands use for what they're doing and how they're manipulating people, is that they say, well, this is what people want, and we're going to give them more. But what's happened is the way they're behaving, the way they're using these mind hijacks or tricks that we're going to talk about, the way they're doing that is much more aligned with their interests than yours. And so the first sort of article that I want to cite people to is, this is a guy by the name of Tristan. Not Christian or Tristan. And Sam Harris, who interviewed Tristan, observed that apparently the person repeating their own name several times is not enough to break through, because he called him either Tristan or Kristen throughout the whole interview. But after hearing him interviewed, I went to his site. It turns out he's a sort of ethicist, like an internet social media ethicist who worked for both, if I'm not mistaken, Facebook and Google. So obviously he had no discernible impact. But his view on these things was very interesting, and he was trying to get people in the business of social media to think about these things in a new way. So, for example, we know this, and you can talk about this from a business standpoint, that a message that interrupts what other people are doing is way more effective than email, which allows them to deal with it kind of whenever. Mm-hmm. Now, it is true that email, especially earlier on in its development, people kept it up. Right. And they had a little ping or bing or whatever it was, or you've got mail, in my case, whenever a piece of mail would come in. I saw you had a Yahoo account.
You do.
Yeah.
That's disturbing.
Now, that dates you and me, that I have AOL and you
I have a Yahoo,
Yeah. And that we won't let them go. You still have your Yahoo account. Mm-hmm. Do you ever look at it?
Yep.
Yep. I look at that AOL. Some of the most interesting stuff comes in on that. Yeah. Other old people sending me stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But email used to interrupt people. If you're still allowing email to interrupt your day, you've got problems, and you're not successful or productive in all likelihood.
Right.
You've managed to control yourself so that you have certain times of day when you go look at email. So you have a piece of software where people volunteer for it. They say, hey, send me texts. And texts are way more effective for you than email, right?
Well, that's something that I'm experimenting with now, but for a lot of people it is,
and you've worked for people where it was.
Mm-hmm. And the software that I use plugs into Infusionsoft that Sam and I talked about on a past episode on automation. So these texts go out completely automated. But that is another form of communication. Something that works really well for us is push notifications on the website. So a lot of websites now have something where you requests that you opt in for push notifications. You get push notifications from Facebook. A lot of people watching this probably got a push notification from Facebook saying that this is going to go live in 10 minutes or whatever it is. So
no, with those people, we gave them a choice to get that push notification, right? Do they have to click?
Yeah, but a lot of people have it on, so if they're following the page,
then they're going to
get it. Or if you click on scheduled live events, if you click get reminder, generally you get a push notification, and those come up on your phone or depending on what your settings are, obviously on your desktop.
But the thing is, we know that the one way of communication is more effective than the other. But the email, which now many people are just waiting to go to and look at in their own time, used to work the way that these kind of push notifications and texts are working.
Yeah, you just have to find what's going to interrupt it the most. I mean, email, the average adult gets over 140 emails per day. So it's cluttered. So if you think about the way that social media notifies you versus how an email notifies you, it's logical that you could assume social media or some other form of communication like a text message or something coming in on your phone is going to be way more useful.
Yeah, where there's both an immediate interruption and it's not so cluttered that it's going to deter you from doing it like email.
That's not to say that email doesn't work or that it's not useful.
No. Yeah. I mean, it can work very well. It's just that social media has discovered that these interruptive techniques, and so they've gone in, they've doubled and tripled down, and they've gone in whole hog on it. And they are organizing your day. Another interesting statistic is people now check their phones 150 times a day on average, and that's been an engineered experience.
I was going to say they're training you to, and there's even something called phantom vibration syndrome now. So it's very similar to phantom limb syndrome, where if an amputee can still feel their limb. If your phone is not on you, you could still feel the vibration that in the pocket that it's
that you
on.
normally carry.
Have you ever had this?
I don't think so.
I have.
Maybe I have.
Yeah. So I felt like I always keep it in my right pocket for whatever.
Yeah.
I felt the buzz the other day, and I deliberately taken my phone out and left. I carry two phones for reasons we don't need to get into, and don't judge me. Did you ever see that? I'm going to just go down a tiny rabbit hole here, but I'm going to come back.
Just a tiny one, guys.
We'll loop it back.
We promise.
Have you seen the what's that coffee called where people put stuff in it, fats and oils?
Bulletproof coffee.
Bulletproof coffee. Have you seen that bulletproof coffee video where the guy gets in the car for the carpool in the morning?
Yes.
Don't judge me because I like it sweet. Yeah. Don't judge me. 4 drops of stevia. Don't judge me because I like it sweet.
Seen that.
No, I'm only kidding. Don't judge me. So anyway, don't judge me. What they're doing is they're training you so well now that your body is reminding you to go check your phone even when your phone isn't buzzing you. But Tristan has said, and I think he's right about this, that one of the ways they're doing this is they're making it like a slot machine in your pocket. That there are variable intermittent rewards. So you're going to take it out, you're going to look, do I have any new followers on Facebook? Do I have any messages? What about Instagram? Who likes my photo? And sometimes it comes up that they're 37 or 49. Sometimes they're 0. So you're going to go, when it's 0, by the way, that's essential to this technique working. Because you go, oh, I'm disappointed. I'm going to have to check it again soon to see.
Even if there are 0, I mean, I could go on Facebook right now on my phone and refresh it, and even if there are no notifications, there's countless new things on your
content, right? But that's the thing, is they got you to do it, and then they have. So this is interesting. This is in Tristan's article.
Thank you for pronouncing his name correctly.
There's
I'm sure he appreciates
the ever-filling bowl. So they did studies where bowls of soup would fill surreptitiously from the bottom, and the person eating didn't know. And they found that the eater would eat 73% more. This is exactly what you're describing. When you refresh to see, did I get 0, 4, 400? You're really getting into the bottomless bowl of soup, because they're going to give you this news feed, and you'll go down there. And here's why all of this is more aligned with their interest than ours, is that your time on their site is exactly what makes them money.
Right.
And so they make getting on and looking at it more often a super addictive behavior. Interestingly enough,
and it's really addictive. There is a dopamine response.
Yes.
That hope that, so you're anticipating that dump, and it just gets shorter and shorter, so you go back more often and more often. That's it.
Yep.
That's it.
I don't think that was appropriate. Well, here's what it seemed insensitive upon reflection. You see how I got into reflection like really quickly after that.
Right.
That's the new me. I didn't. Joe Rogan recently said that he spoke ill of chiropractic, and then he went home, and I'm quoting now, smoked a big doob. And then that made him feel like, oh, maybe I was too harsh. So he did some research on it, decided he hadn't been harsh enough.
He was correct.
And he booked a new attack episode. But see there, he didn't think about it till after the show.
He ended up doubling down.
He did.
Yeah.
At least. He went hard after the...
So is that an example of cognitive bias?
Well, I think it's an example of how I'm able to interrupt it. Like, I've been studying this, but you made the point in a little promo for this, that becoming aware of it is not half the battle. Well, in a way it is.
But it's only half the battle.
But it's only half the battle, right? Because then you've got to do something about it, which I just did. I'm very impressed. Which is a cognitive bias. I think you're right. So I know this may seem confusing, but we're going to tie it all together. And we should warn everyone, this is the first. We don't even really care for a change, how many people, because we read all this stuff on cognitive bias, now we're being manipulated by Facebook. We don't actually care how many people watch this one, because this is so good and so powerful and so awesome. Leslie, let's edit that out and put it in the lead.
Right.
Let's lead with that.
Yeah.
Because we just do not care. This is so good that we're going to spend 3 shows on this. Now, not in a row, because we're going to use this against you right now and whet your appetite. Like, if you find anything useful or interesting or fascinating or bizarre about the show, you're going to want to see those other two.
I mean, bizarre, there is just a basket of
Nobody knows.
has nothing to do with cognitive bias. We're 15 minutes into the show now, and we're just first
trying to make them
mentioning
eat.
Before we get to this, so there is fear of missing out here, which is another cognitive bias that we can use against our audience, or more appropriately, teach them to use ethically in their businesses and practice. So there's Tucker's in the
I
game.
use FOMO.
Yeah, and it's appropriate to use it, but you just have to be careful that you're using it ethically. But interesting, on this point of the haptic feedback and the intermittent rewards, Sam Harris, when he was interviewing Tristan.
Come on now. You were doing so well.
Tristan said, oh, that thing doesn't work because whenever I look it says 99. Well, it turns out that in whatever social media he was talking about, that's probably an engineering error.
Right. Once
you get to 99 and above, it just shows 99.
Yeah.
And I've had that too. And
Are you popular?
yes, very. Well, and it's correct that you just don't care anymore.
Right.
Whereas if it said 91 or 104, it might still be engaging.
I was going to say, I get like an anxiety from having a notification that shows too many. notifications.
You're concerned something has gone terribly wrong.
Not necessarily that. I guess it's more of like a compulsion that I can't have notifications on my phone. So I've either turned
It's
them
like having
off.
unread emails.
Yeah, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't have bubble notifications on my phone, because otherwise that would cause.
Well, you're not playing into their game, but at least they've given you the ability to turn those notifications off. I have one that it just refuses to let you turn it off, which is, again, there's the line between ethical and not ethical. So
Right.
when we do these things in our businesses and professional practices, we need to do them in a way that lets people shut it off. So an example that Tristan uses is that, we'll give them the site for this, right? Leslie? Yeah, perfect. Because this article is, I don't know, he puts an estimate of how long it will take to read it, and I'm a fast reader, but it didn't take me very long. But he's saying, I want to be ethical about this because I want you to read it, but if you don't feel like committing that much time to it, don't get started, which is very interesting. But he, I totally lost track of where I was going with that. What topic were we talking about? I was like flashing back and feeling guilty.
Myself.
I'm wearing depends
the control
right now.
side. Being able to control.
Oh yeah, the control. Oh yeah, the other example that he gave was thank you. Some will be acting as my left brain. My left hemisphere.
He's line producing today.
Yeah. Leslie, you can jump in any time too. Leslie's like, I don't actually listen to the show.
Look, I need you to close the loop, damn it.
We did go right back to that one. So, what was it again? No, he gives an example of the New York Times and how they say, listen, subscribe and pay us money. I think it's a paid subscription to online. And you can unsubscribe anytime. But then they make the unsubscribe difficult when you go online, where you'd think, well, I could probably unsubscribe online because I can unsubscribe at any time. And then, I'm not picking on the New York Times here. This is just the example that I gave. Because I mentioned that because
we're
of
gonna
triggering.
have to make a meme or a GIF of you with the New York Times logo tackling it.
Oh
Then-
boy.
Way up for the New Yorker too.
What happened?
Soon they'll be tracking us down, threatening us.
What happens is that if you click on it to unsubscribe, it says, well, you can unsubscribe by calling a number during regular business hours. So, look, you can unsubscribe, but it's harder than it was to subscribe, and it's harder than they alluded to it being.
Right.
So, again, not an attack on the New York Times, and I can tackle something that the Wall Street Journal is doing on a future show, just to show that I don't have a cognitive bias toward this, which I do not. Well, I do, but I try to override it. So let me just break these down, because there are 10 of them we're going to talk about really quickly here. Oh, should we talk about before we get to the 10? Just playing the game.
I know what
here.
you're doing.
Yeah.
Open that loop.
So Leslie brought us, and it was fuller than this, but we took some stuff out. Producer Leslie. And we should hold these up because they are bright red and awesome raspberries. I have the gold ones coming on out in the garden.
I have black ones, but you just don't get as many with black raspberries.
No, you do not, but they're delicious. So this is less than a day's harvest from your garden, and we are in Pennsylvania, July, what are we, the 9th here?
Yeah.
So July 9th, that's pretty early harvest, and we have cucumbers, 4 types of squash, kale, chard, I saw sorrel in here. What's this one?
Herb.
Oh, just an herb bundle. Some green tomatoes. There's the sorrel. There's a giant bag of watercress, which I'm going to go plant some of that in the stream and mix the rest in with, just so you know. I'm going to mix it with cream cheese. Ooh, yeah. My string beans are coming on fast now.
Yeah.
So we have this here because we're going to do 2 shows, we think, and we're going to do them live during the summer. One's going to be grow your own, make your own. Yeah. So we're going to talk about how we garden, and or you're in a CSA, I think, right? You use Doorstep.
Yep.
So how you can either grow your own or get organic, real food that tastes completely different. I just pulled some baby carrots out yesterday.
Yeah.
Oh my God! You don't realize how fake carrots are in the store. I mean, you eat them and you think they have flavor until you pull something out of the ground and eat it. after washing it, I should say, because I still have a little grit in there from my gardening / heating experience. So we're going to pick a bunch of stuff, and then we're going to have people over for dinner, and we're going to make a bunch of stuff.
Nice.
So pick your own, make your own.
So keep an eye out for the invite to the cook your own.
Yeah, and you don't have to. We're going to show people how to do it. You don't have to garden in a big way. Like you've raised beds.
I have raised beds. I do a permaculture system.
Yeah. Okay. So I have raised beds as well. You don't have we're going to show people ways to do them super easily, products they could use.
Yeah.
But it's pretty easy, and you compost, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You compost.
Yes.
Yeah. And even if you live in a city, there is we should call Maya.
Vertical gardens.
Vertical gardens, and you could do composting with worms in a trash can. Yeah, so if you have a little room, even on a deck or what do they call those things where they're like a deck, but they're up in the air on the side of a building?
A deck?
Balcony. That's it. Yeah.
Lifted deck. Air deck.
That technique, by the way, in case you're wondering, is called a false mind read. So you could say to your partner or your spouse, hey, remember when we went to Lake Wallenpaupack and it was the most romantic vacation we ever had? And that's you thinking it's the most romantic vacation you had. But if you use a false mind read and say, remember when we had the most romantic vacation ever and we went, and then you'll get an answer, because people can't wait, they have to let you know, and then you're getting what they thought that was. In this case, it was, what was it called? Floating deck? Air deck. Right.
By the way, Tyson and Dave are with us.
Dave
Braxton.
Braxton. Hey, Dave Braxton and Tyson. Tyson
Nice.
all the way from Australia, and Dave Braxton all the way from Berlin. Welcome, guys.
I like how we tell people we're Dave Braxton.
Here's his address.
You said you want to get doxxed? Come on the show.
Dave, you could actually just come over. If Dave wanted to, he could come and just pull up a chair. It was that close. Actually, we've narrowed down where we are now, which is not that smart. Because all the stuff on Facebook is false.
Correct.
So, but we just revealed something. I mean,
So
they
now
could get
the
within.
New York Times actually knows where you are.
Yes.
Right. You made their job.
Well, I had a subscription for many years, so they probably still kept that. I always when I stopped my subscription.
David Trees.
No, it was Trevor McMaster's.
Not Craven Moorhead.
No. I one time did wear that name tag in a secure facility, and the person that controlled that facility saw it and reprimanded me. This is the government was involved. It was terrible. Okay, so let's go back to. Let me just give you. We got some time here. Yeah. We've got some time, and Dave and Tyson, they're spending a beautiful day listening to us, so we've got to give them something they can do. Yeah. In fact, Dave gets violent if he doesn't get something out of a product or service.
He does.
Even though he's not paying for this, doesn't matter. And you pair me against this well-trained animal, and he can hurt me.
He can.
So, despite our weight differential. You'd think that would be an advantage, but it's not.
It is kind of how jiu-jitsu works.
Throws me around like a rag doll. Okay, so anyway, let's give Dave something so that so stuff doesn't get ugly next Friday.
Do you have anything to hold out for Steve Richardson?
No, you know what? We do have. Steve texted me or messaged me some mechanism that he used to communicate with me, where he explained why he would not be on the show today.
Oh, well, that's nice of him.
That was very nice of him. But let's show this, because we found, of all places, Wikipedia, but this was created by designhacks.co. Algorithmic design by John Manoogian III. JM3 as he calls himself. But it's on Wikipedia. But could we show them the codex? This is the most amazing sort of condensing of cognitive biases. So we will, it's actually up on the screen.
She has it,
right?
yeah.
So let's show them that while we're talking about Tristan's mind hijacks, if you will. So his first one is, if you control the menu, you control the choices.
Right.
Which I think is fantastic and something that we don't often think of. Are we having sound problems?
No.
We don't know.
I think it's okay.
Do we sound?
It's just a little echoey.
Oh, it's getting echoey.
Oh,
Yeah.
you know what it is?
We're gonna try to fix that. Mainly
No,
for Dave Braxton.
It's okay. Just mute that one.
Because he demands high quality information presented in with
High-
like a
high
clear,
production value,
like
yeah.
a 4K. He has probably has a giant TV that he's watching it with some Bose headphones or something.
Mm-hmm.
And probably in the dark.
Yeah,
Like a darkened theater or something.
his personal theater
In his
in his
room.
lair. Yeah. So we don't want to let Dave down. Has Dave? Is he
Yes,
still?
he said, let's hear some good stuff. I'll take you on easy. Or he said, sorry, I'll take it easy on you.
I'll take it. When he says "let's roll," that's when I start to worry. So control the menu, control the choices. So he has a little diagram, which is the menu itself: great choice 1, great choice 2, great choice 3. But then the big question, which we never think to ask, is, hey, what's not on the menu?
Right.
Is the person who designed the menu? Are their goals in alignment with what I want to happen as a result of looking at this menu? So again, the two sides of this coin are, for Dave, one, begin to train yourself to interrupt this. So when you realize that you're looking at a menu on screen or in a restaurant or wherever you're being shown the choices that you have, start to ask these questions. What's not on the menu? Who created that menu? Are their goals in alignment with mine, or at least sufficiently in alignment with mine? Like, do we need to round to 5 or do we need to round to 10?
But the flip side is when you're creating menus, offer fewer choices.
Yes, fewer choices that you know are really in alignment. And probably, here's the other thing, is that our customers and our clients, when they're confronted with all the choices they have, are paralyzed by
That's
it.
why
Did-
Costco has fewer items.
Did we talk about that study on the ice cream pop-up?
No, but you could talk about that.
Yeah, so they did a study with ice cream pop-ups, and they had, same ice cream, everything was the same except the number of flavors offered.
Mm-hmm.
So one situation it was like 26 flavors, the other situation was only 6 flavors. The stands with less flavors had more sales.
And the reason for that is the one that we're talking about here, that the decision is overwhelming. So typically my job when people do a very sophisticated sort of decision tree with estate planning is there's this giant range of options. So I sort of explain what's here, and that there may be 1 or 2 in here. And then I need to dig with them to find out, well, they're typically pretty comfortable in one of those places. And then we could do some refinements. But I do occasionally have clients that still want to make a bad choice. Like everything I know, it's a bad choice. And so I do make it deliberately a little bit harder for them to make a bad choice, whether it's with pricing or spending a little bit more time on it, or making the other one seem less confusing and more attractive. And we all do this unconsciously. By becoming consciously aware of it, you can do this more appropriately and ethically and in a more efficacious way for you and for the client. Because as Sam's observing, the client or the customer is going to be overwhelmed if you don't make the path fairly clear for them.
Right.
But your ethical duty then is to do some real thinking and analysis beforehand by finding out, making them do some homework, finding out what it is that they really need, so that the path you're making clear is the thing that they really need.
The type of businesses that many of us are in is, we're not just trading a commodity for dollars.
Right.
Is we've positioned ourselves to be an expert or a guide of some sort. So we need to back that up with this process, a series of binary choices rather than a very singular, complicated choice.
But we should be thinking about these questions for our clients and customers too. What is it I'm not putting on the menu?
Right.
And would that just confuse them? What if I get in there and I find out that I was wrong about something, and that thing that's not on the menu should be? How do I get it on the menu without it being confusing?
And are we leaving it off the menu because of our cognitive bias, right? We're projecting our wants, needs, and value assessment of the products we offer onto the customer when they may not have it.
Correct. And so that takes some thought, but we could be deeply and richly repaid for that, because when you get that right for customers, they are willing to pay. The value proposition is way better for them. The perceived value is way better, and that's all accounted for in pricing, which brings me to this amazing book.
Do they discuss Costco in there?
You know what? This guy, I'll bet you he does. But you've discussed Costco and can and should discuss that again. But this is called Confessions of the Pricing Man, How Price Affects Everything. It's Herman, Hermann, Simon, Simon. And it is unbelievable. It will totally change. It's not an easy read, but it will totally change how you think about things and some of the factors that you've used, including these biases that we've been talking about of your own that affect how you do pricing.
Well, you know, a premium pricing model can, you know, potentiate confirmation bias. If you spend a lot of money on something, you're now going to find for reasons to justify that
you spent that
expenditure. Yeah.
And again, as long as if you're creating the premium pricing, as long as you're providing things that don't just have perceived value.
Correct.
They have to have perceived value. You could know they're valuable all day long and people won't pay you for it. So you have to find out what it is, like the big problems that they need to be solved. And then you can put the pill in the meat. So in other words, if they've got a big problem they want to be solved and you've got something you know they need, you can describe that to them and say, this comes with this.
Yeah.
Like, for example, people used to say, I only want a will. And we would say, well, we don't actually do just a will. We're going to do that for you if that's appropriate after we talk about it. But just as part of the package at the same price, you're going to get this, and you're going to get this, and you're going to get this. Things like power of attorney or medical decision making if you want them. Because we know that they need those things.
Right.
The statistical probability of somebody that's 42 dying is pretty low. The statistical probability they might be incapacitated and need somebody to take care of their children and make medical decisions for them and pay their bills and handle their finances is much higher. So we know something that they don't really know, and we have to make that interesting and palatable to them and seem like it's worth. So we have to create something they really want and price it in a way that still compensates us for all of those other things, but that they get those things that are really important to them. Hijack 2 is put a slot machine in billions of pockets. We talked about this already, how they are doing that. The essential technique that you want to keep in mind to understand both how you're being manipulated and how you will appropriately and ethically manipulate other people is intermittent variable rewards. So you want to create a marketing system and a system of selling and treating your existing clients and customers and past clients and customers to the same thing. Sending them a thank you, an unannounced bonus, sending them a thank you gift. These are sort of the physical world examples of unexpected surprises. Right. That will make that person way less likely to want to disconnect from you than if you. And one of the other things I saw that was pretty interesting about this, and I was thinking about it for you, is occasionally, like you do a report that you sell, occasionally sending to prospects, or if it might be interesting to people that bought from you but maybe didn't master that area, sending them a report that has this value and just saying, this is a thank you for being in our system or being part of our family or whatever. The third hijack is one we are victim of and we should be using. So there's a guy, Ben Settle, writes a monthly newsletter on email marketing. And he constantly writes in his newsletter about how he mocks and ejects people from his newsletter list for writing him emails with questions that he thinks are inappropriate, and or explains how if someone quits, he marks them off in Infusion or whatever CRM uses to never be allowed back in again.
Right.
Now that sounds deranged, but his existing customers sort of like this aspect of his personality, number one. Number two, this cognitive bias. They, even if they have a couple bad newsletters in a row that aren't particularly useful to them, they go, well, geez, if I quit, I'll never be allowed back in again. I will miss out. Because he also uses these intermittent rewards, which is sometimes the newsletter is 5 times as packed with things as it would be otherwise. So you do not want to miss out on those. So he's got fear of missing out and intermittent rewards working in a physical newsletter like nobody's business. He also sends an email out every day. It's not an autoresponder. He writes something. Listen, I'm sure his rating is better than what I'm about to do because I'm going to do this off the cuff. But he writes, like, I pulled into the grocery store today, and a man smoking a cigarette got out of his car, and there was gas leaking from the tank. And he did escape unharmed, but his car caught on fire and burned, to the ground. When I came back out from buying my quarter pound of bologna and American cheese, there he was with the fireman. It's just weird stuff that he's observing, but he relates it to something that he's doing, and he makes an offer every day. So I heard him describe recently a process that I'm going to teach at, because I use it, and I heard him describe it in a way that was even simpler than I do. And anybody that was listening to his description would realize, like, I just got a template for a business that could make me thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, depending on, the price point, profit margin, things like that. They're not going to want to lose access to those entertaining emails that are filled with interesting stuff and access to that newsletter where, according to him, they'll never be allowed back in again.
Right.
It's just fascinating. So fear of missing out, I think we all use that probably unconsciously, but we should be more aware of it and use it in appropriate ways. Well, we use it in marketing business black ops, which is our guys still on there.
Yeah.
They are both members and have come. This is Tyson Franklin's third year coming, I think, all the way from
Australia. Yeah.
And Dave has been, for years. He may have been to almost all of them. And I think that they could probably attest to this, that each year we go over things that are useful to go over again, and we always have like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 radically new things. And so when you come, the fear is if you don't come back, you're going to miss out on those. And people have actually described that. So we're using it both intentionally and unconsciously. Another one of these mind hijacks is social approval. And this is liking, when you change your Facebook, what is that, profile picture?
Yeah.
Then people, so I never change mine, but so I'm told that they go, look, do people like my new Facebook profile picture? And the kind of sharing mechanisms that are built in, I don't know if I described it or not. I guess we have to be careful in pre-production to remember what we talked about there and what we talked about here. But Tyson's birthday was recently, and Facebook sent me a picture that was tagged with Alex and me and Tyson, and said, wish Tyson a happy birthday. And by the way, why don't you put this picture up too? And that results in more interaction and more time on Facebook by more people.
Right.
And we did exactly what they wanted. I did exactly what they wanted me to do.
And Facebook is also playing with that familiarity bias, I think.
Yes, exactly.
Right? So it's, this is why I need to keep going back, because I'm feeling more connected to people.
And I have a reciprocity, which is that someone's liked this, so I should go look at their page.
Yeah.
Who here or watching or listening hasn't done that? Somebody liked something that you thought was worthwhile, you took the time to post, and you go, I haven't looked at that person's profile in a long time, I should go like something of theirs. So that sort of reciprocity, they're all bundled together and working.
And again, you can use that to your benefit.
Correct.
You go out, you be the giver first, right? Go interact with other people's posts, and then it comes back to you.
And you could do this in a non-social media context.
Absolutely.
So if you have a brick and mortar business, you probably want to start videotaping testimonials of people when you complete the sale to them or they've used the product and they're in a super happy and satisfied state. Send that to them, let them share that, post that, let them get that publicity because you have a following. There are all these ways in which you should be doing these things. And almost anything we talk about here can be done in video, it can be done online, it can be done in direct mail, it can be done in a postcard. You just got to take some time and think about this. And like we said, think about it both ways. How am I being manipulated, and how can I use this to ethically manipulate people into recognizing what it is that they need, sharing information with me that will help me to develop products and services.
I was going to say a good example of a non-ethical instance would be the goat testicle.
Yes.
Guy.
Right, so let's revisit that.
Sure. We've skipped over when we were originally going to
I think we're going to do a whole goat testicle show at some point.
We could do a whole goat testicle show,
but it's worth telling people how he did, because he used this expertly.
Yes, among other things. But there's a guy, I forget his first name. It was Dr. Brinkman. He was practicing early 1900s, late 1890s. And he was not an actual practicing doctor. He was just a guy that failed out of med school a few times.
But he did potions, I think.
Yeah, so he would go around to these different traveling. What do you call it?
By the way, we're not advocating this.
No.
There's a book. We should plug the book first. It's by Dan Kennedy and someone else. I think it's called Making Them Believe.
Yeah,
I think that's what it's called.
Or is it called Charlatan?
Charlatan is the
biography of this guy.
Got it.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Charlatan is another book to read, and then the whole book about how he used marketing techniques is Making Them Believe.
Got it.
Which you should, if you haven't read that, you should read it.
Because he's advocating not using them unethically.
Right, of course.
And he's definitely not
He
advocating
basically-
planting goat testicle.
Yeah, basically removed, for men who were having trouble, removed part of
They
their
were having man trouble.
man trouble, yeah.
Leslie,
Removed part
cover
of
your ears.
the
Oh, they
gland
are.
and replaced that part with a goat gland.
Mm-hmm.
And the way he marketed it and advertised it and used testimonials just played into pretty much every single cognitive bias you could imagine.
Right.
And he had perseverance too, because the government would constantly shut down
Yeah.
a method he was using.
So his primary method towards the end was radio. And he opened his own radio station in the United States, and then they shut him down. The government shut him down, so he just moved his radio station into Mexico.
Right, just
and
across
to
the
this day,
border.
it's still the most powerful radio station ever.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
he could broadcast from Mexico up through Canada.
It's amazing.
And he had many people come to have a goat gland implanted.
Yeah,
in
he
them.
had like 3 or 4 hospitals.
With amazing number of testimonials. I can't believe this was good for you. It had to have been bad for you, but the testimonials were glowing.
Glowing, people had children. With, like it does,
Well, that's a
that
different-
doesn't make any sense. He started off at these traveling medical shows, though, and he noticed that all of these medicine men were selling one like cure-all potion. And the way he was so successful and eventually got kicked out of these traveling medical shows is he would take the same potion and dye it 3 different colors, and then advertise each for a specific ailment that somebody
Right.
had. So then he would start convincing people that they had all 3. So instead of buying just one,
Right.
he convinced them that they had all 3 ailments and would sell them 3 different potions.
So it's,
But it was
it's the
bundling.
illusion of choice.
Right.
Yep.
Right?
And what's very interesting, and again, we're not advocating this, but the brain makes that experience real.
Right.
So there are studies, and I think the book that you could look for the science on this is a book called Subliminal. There are studies that show that they would they give people a glass of a $15 bottle of wine and a $90 bottle of wine, and they would ask, which do you like better? And
Right.
people go, I like that $90 bottle of wine. It's fantastic. So it's the price issue that you were talking
Right.
about, which caused a bias to naturally assume that it would be better. But then they went one step further and they put them into an fMRI, functional MRI, and they found that when they drank the $90 bottle of wine versus the $15 bottle of wine, that the area of the brain associated with having a more amazing experience of pleasure lit up.
Right.
So it wasn't just an illusion. The
It
suggestion
actually tasted better to
it
them.
actually tasted better. So packaging and what you do before the customer or the patient or the client buys
Right.
from you matters very, very
Yeah.
much.
So it doesn't just have to be price, but things you can do can really improve the customer experience.
Yeah, they genuinely improve it.
Yeah.
So, for example, when you opened that new gym, which is dangerously close to Dave Braxton,
It is.
we're honing the targeting. is- The photographs of that were pristine. They still are.
Yep.
It's super organized. It's super clean. You had comments emphasizing that. People talking about
Right.
that. And so before it even opened, somebody that thought about or worried about or was concerned about those kind of things, that was gone.
Right.
It wasn't an issue anymore. They came with that, that part of their brain totally satisfied already. Another one of these is bundling your reasons with their reasons. So you could align your reasons. The physical example he gives is a grocery stores, where the number 1 and 2 most popular reasons for visiting are pharmacy refills and buying milk. I did not know that pharmacy refills were the number 1 reason for visiting a grocery store. But grocery stores want to maximize how much people buy, so they put those items often in the back of the store.
Yep.
Where aligning with what you want totally would mean putting them in the front of the store. Actually, Wegmans has kind of come to a compromise on that.
Yeah.
You have to go a little bit into the store, but there's a kind of a station where you could get eggs and milk and juice, which I guess are the 3 most recent. And the pharmacy is in the middle of the store, but not all the way in the back. So they've kind of conceded that we want to be helpful to you, but then they've done other things to lure you when you're there into going voluntarily.
That's something that Costco is maniacal on, because they have the roasted chickens in the back, which they lose money on, but they put it all the way at the back.
You can smell it.
You can smell it when you walk in, but they also don't mark the aisles or anything like that, so you end up wandering throughout the entire store to get to the back.
Oh, so what's in what aisle is deliberately not marked?
Correct.
And the chicken smell is luring you to the back.
Yep.
Well, chicken vitamins are important.
So in other words, they make the thing the customer wants, milk and pharmacy, inseparable from what the business wants, which is for you to spend time there. So again, how could this work for us once we have clarity? But notice, you have to have real clarity about what the customer is not just saying they want, but what their actual behavior is doing here. And we have a show, this will probably be in the late fall, where we're going to talk about how you get information from customers, why you need to listen to them, and why you then ignore exactly what they said. So we'll get to this in a lot more detail, but be thinking about how can I do what Costco and Wegmans and these kind of supermarkets do without it being so bad that it's irritating.
We use software for that.
Yeah, so talk about that.
True conversion. I don't know if you use something like it, I think. There is a software called True Conversion, TRU conversion, and it basically can take you through the whole process, from your whole funnel process, and you can see where people, like, bottlenecks are occurring, but you can also record the screen, so you can see what areas of the screen people are going to, what products, and like the display of the product on the website, how that's attracting people to that area of the website, and then even what's causing them to, like, once they reach a certain point, what's causing them to exit the screen. So you can tell all of this by, there are certain actions that they take with their mouse. You can tell all of what's going on in their mind, essentially, while they're scrolling the website.
And that might, the data that you get from that might alter.
It's going to alter how you present your website.
Right.
And present certain items on it.
So a couple of other things. As we said, we think we're going to spend at least 2 more shows on this.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to go into the science a little bit more of the heuristics, what they are, the specific kind of shortcuts people take, and the kind of specific cognitive biases that they create. And then we're going to talk about how you use those cognitive biases ethically. So let me just plant a few of them in your mind, and we're going to go back to these. So the ambiguity effect is the tendency to avoid options for which missing information makes the probability of a particular outcome seem unknown.
Right.
And so we then do certain things that we wouldn't otherwise do. There's a couple that are particularly fascinating here. Anchoring. You have to be careful of this when you're marketing, because anchoring or focalism is a cognitive bias that describes the human tendency to rely too heavily on the first piece of information offered when you're asking somebody to make a decision. So this argues very much in favor of being really cautious about what the first couple of things are, because there is this general emphasis on recency of memory as well. We've got lots and lots of good information for you on this. Here's a fascinating one, automation bias. So what we found is that we've created these computer systems and ways of automating decision making, and humans have now become biased to accept what automation serves up as the correct solution, all to the point where I think you have some heard some evidence.
Yeah,
on
so
testimonials.
that people will go value an online testimonial or review site over a direct personal referral.
Which seems insane and counterintuitive because as I was talking, you know, the three of us, I don't know, Leslie, you have dietary restrictions, so we don't dine together. Robin's always afraid I'm going to poison you or leave like like some peanuts open or something. She's actually said this, but like you would take a restaurant recommendation from me because I sort of know what you like and vice versa. But this automation bias is actually overriding that in people and saying the thing, Skynet knows more about what we want, which is why Skynet's going to be so dangerous. It's going to go fast when we go.
Yeah.
Because Skynet will also have all of this available to it and will optimize the manipulation of our own cognitive biases. Which is why if you want to be a survivor when the singularity comes and AI takes over, you want to be able to opt out of some of these things. Interestingly, on the automation bias, this is particularly dangerous, and they have to work on it with humans working in places like nuclear power plants and nuclear submarines where you are getting data which you trust more from automation maybe than your own judgment about things. So there's the availability heuristic, which is a mental shortcut that relies on immediate examples that come to a given person's mind when evaluating a specific concept, method, or design. And Costco. Yep. Well, this is really going to be really important to people. We're going to talk about how they engineer the process that people go through. I can tell you that we paid a lot of attention to this in our process, and it's been really important to us that we did. We spent a lot of time on that. We're going to talk about confirmation bias, and this is something that is just huge, and you see it in politics today. And again, this isn't an indictment of anybody or talking about any particular party. It's just that no matter which side of this debate you're on, you're probably observing that the civility of debate is decayed. And this is in large part because of confirmation bias. So one of the things they did was they showed Democrats and registered Republicans newspapers, and they asked them to talk about the number of articles that were published about about Republicans or Democrats. What was interesting is that the real test was, did Democrats see any articles that were positive about Republicans or vice versa? And they didn't. It's confirmation bias. You're sort of seeing and reading and noticing and paying attention to the things. They're in alignment with your lens that you've already built to view this.
And we have a bias towards confirmation bias. And this is where the automation comes in the social media, where the algorithms are designed to stoke that bias.
Yes.
Right? They want to show you more things that they are anticipating you will like.
And this is kind of aligned with the bandwagon effect, which is the faster you see other people adopting things, the more likely you are, because most people are not contrarian by nature. There are contrarians that survive in every society, but they're usually equipped with other skill sets. Most humans that survived because they were not contrarian and went along. And the rare contrarians that cause sort of change in societies, they don't always fare well. So they're sometimes poisoned or hanged, occasionally shot by arrows or beheaded. And the French had this whole guillotine thing. That's very upbeat. A framing effect, which is that it's an example of a cognitive bias in which people react to a particular choice in different ways depending on how it's presented, either as a gain or a loss. We're going to spend a lot of time on that because that should be part of how you engineer the frame that people look through. So today, just give you examples of it, try to get your awareness up, try to catch yourself falling victim to these things and stop yourself. The best exercise I think that we've developed for this so far, based on the research we did, is the menu.
Right.
Because you're confronted with menus on screen and off screen all the time, and literally a menu in a restaurant. So one of the things you could ask is, what's great that's not on the menu? And if you get a dish that they describe that you really love, your brain is going to say, aha, and it's going to reward you for asking that question more often. But asking what's not on the menu, why isn't it there, who created this menu, are their goals in alignment with mine? Very powerful questions. And then finally, each and every one of the things we talked about today, should be being strategically and tactically deployed in your own business, because this is how people process information more smoothly and elegantly. 2 little things I need to share. Can I put a second book, even though it would take us over time?
You can. You may.
Done like 4 or 5 books.
Well,
We
so
only have 2 with.
can I do a
Yeah.
5th? So I just read this book. It was given to me by a coaching client that came to see me. Thank you, by the way. No BS Guide to Powerful Presentations, the ultimate no holds barred plan to selling anything with webinars, online media, speeches, and seminars. So look, I have a business that does this. It was fascinating. It is an awesome example, as we've suggested to you before, of a giant direct response piece, but filled with just enough practical, usable information. And also a great example, if you're going to write longer articles or pieces, of driving you back to the website with bonuses and things like that. And then my final point is I just bought a big bundle of, I used to be a stringer for a newspaper when I was a kid, and I both wrote articles and took pictures and things like that. So I had these. And I thought, why did I stop using them? So I went and bought a big thing marked News Professional Reporter's Notebook. These are like very inexpensive, like $1 or something like that. But what's nice is, if you take them out and somebody's been ever interviewed, especially somebody that's been misquoted, while they're talking, and you just open it like this, and while you're listening, just start writing stuff down. Mm-hmm. It is awesome what happens. But if a person hasn't been interviewed, they become eerily fascinated with what's going on. I want to know what's happening. So just a little fun you can have, but really a convenient way to keep notes and to-do lists and things like that too. Thank you for being with us. Sorry we started at 5:30 today, but we were all coming in from out of town. Yeah. And Leslie had to pick.
Yep.
And you're a very fair-skinned person. You were out in the sun.
Yeah, I know.
And they can see that you're a super red, right?
No, we don't have me lit.
Oh, you're not lit that way?
No.
Just deliberately?
Yeah.
Because you're like a beet.
Yeah, they don't know that I'm a daywalker.
Yes.
Protect myself.
You're
Well, we do know that because if you were like a demon ginger,
Sure. I wouldn't even be visible. You wouldn't be able to see me.
Right. Yeah, you wouldn't show up on the camera.
Yeah.
Right. We are thinking about having a show with one of each.
Yeah.
Each type of ginger.
floating pair of headphones.
Might be able to actually make that happen.
It was special spending time with everybody, and thank you to our audience for listening in or watching, as the case may be. It was awesome, and we will see you all soon. I guess next week.
Next week?
Yeah.
Ciao. Arrivederci.
I think it's a Reaver Dare cheek.
That's if you're going to school in North Carolina.